I didn't have to endure some of the things of being incarcerated. But the lesson I learned was that many persons who aren't incarcerated aren't any luckier than those who were. It's just that we didn't get caught doing things that we were doing. And so it should give us a better appreciation of how to help those who've gotten out of jail get back into society.
You know, Pastor, when we talk about the criminal justice system in the state of Tennessee, I think we've talked about that on many occasions, but if you had to say one of the most important things that you would do if you had an opportunity to change the system, what would that be?
When you say you use the number one.
Well, and so the number of things that you would do. Very
absolutely.
Good.
And so many things that could be changed, you know. For one thing, the signal that's beamed from the prison system needs to be changed, you know. And what I mean by that is we follow the individual from the crime scene through the judicial system all the way to the walls or the gates of the prison system. And from there, we don't have any more knowledge or information concerning that individual. And at the same time, a lot of these guys are in prison. They're developing themselves while they're in prison, you know, and they deserve a chance to get out and to use some of the skills and things that they've developed and some of the knowledge that they've gained and the enhancements of their own personal lives, personally rehabilitating themselves, and then give them opportunity to come out and make a difference in society and be productive members of society, you know. So that's just, you know, one of the things, you know, that I would change. There's so many other things that needs to be changed concerning the criminal justice system that that list goes on and on and on.
Okay, and so what we'll do, we'll stop for our first commercial break here, and then we'll come back and we'll start with Representative Love, and we'll let him deal with it from his perspective, and then we'll have an opportunity to sort of move this on. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. And then push it over to him, and then he'll take up the rest of the time. But in a real sense, you know, take about 4 or 5 minutes to go on and talk about whatever you wish to talk about dealing with the criminal justice system, some of your activities or some of the things that you think are right or wrong or whatever, and et cetera, just from that perspective.
All right.
And I'll introduce the show, and we'll have 8 minutes, and then after that 8 minutes, we'll have 10 minutes. But I'll give you about 4 or 5 minutes of that, and then he'll take up he'll sort of feed off your information, and then he'll end that second segment for us, and then we'll come back and we'll sort of divide the 10 minutes between the two of you.
Okay.
Okay.
That sounds great.
That was a terrible thing, but in Orlando, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, really.
Yeah. I tell you.
Just catching it. Then the little boy.
Just something. Oh,
snatched by
all these children. I mean, one get eaten up by a gorilla.
Yeah.
And then one by an alligator. Oh, man.
I'm so overprotective of my little grandkids, man.
I tell you,
won't believe it, man.
You
like, they
almost
can't
have
walk.
to be.
Yeah, they can't even walk behind me in the store, man. You got to be in my side.
You can't let that happen.
Yeah,
because they get snatched up.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You know, I'm like, well, I gotta see them at all times.
Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Pastor K. Walker and Representative Love, and the topic is the criminal justice system in Tennessee. Representative Love, before we had our first commercial break, we promised that we'd give you an opportunity to talk about the criminal justice system in Tennessee, whether from the your position as a representative in the Tennessee legislature or from your own personal information and et cetera. Let's talk about it from that perspective.
I think much of what Pastor Walker said is true. We do a poor job of encouraging persons to pursue a career after they have spent their time in jail. A prime example is we don't provide as many educational opportunities as we do. That's why I'm grateful to say that this past legislative session, I was able to get $250,000 reoccurring in the state budget for a program called the Higher Education Initiative that specifically provides free college courses in certain prisons in Tennessee. Wow. What that does is it allows a person who meets certain requirements of behavior and sentencing to take classes for free while in prison, in the hopes that when they get out of prison, they can continue to take some classes and then get their college degree and then pursue opportunity to get back into society in a good way. We have to keep encouraging persons who have been incarcerated to do well once they get out. And the best way we can do that is to say, if while you're in prison you want to better yourself educationally, here's an opportunity for you to take these classes in the hopes, again, that when you get out, you can continue your education and then graduate and then get you a job, right, that meets your skill set you developed in the classroom in prison.
And I think that that's a program that, in a real sense, that should go a long way. Should it not, Pastor, in terms of doing things?
Absolutely. I recall when I was incarcerated, I was able to take college courses from Trevecca East Campus Prison Program, and at the same time, I was also able to use my GI Bill. And I was able to get a Pell Grant and all that kind of stuff like that. Use my GI Bill and everything, and that means I was being able to take college courses and also receive money from the government, from the VA, which I earned by being in the military service, honorably discharged and everything from the United States Navy. And like I say, our good old President Ronald Reagan, he did something back there, and those programs ceased to exist within the system. But to hear Representative Love speak concerning, passing legislation to get those things going with the monies, recurring monies coming in to do that, that's awesome. That's wonderful, because it's a lot of guys in there, Dr. Haney, that will avail themselves to that, because it's a wonderful thing, and they're looking for stuff like that, because that's not a whole lot of rehabilitation that goes on in the prison system that's provided by the state. So to have something like this in place, it's awesome. But before we get too far in the show, I need to say this concerning Representative Love. I met him back during the flood, when the flood took place. 2010, when the flood hit Nashville. I was attached at that time to another church, pastoring one of their locations. And when the flood hit, we didn't do anything. And Pastor Love, man, they was on the ground out there, man. I was coming all the way from Antioch to Bordeaux, bringing stuff down there, and they was on the ground, man. He was out there actively, man, involved, engaged in that community. And I've been impressed, with him ever since. And now that he stepped out and pretty much followed in his father's footsteps and got into the legislature, and now not only is there, but actually doing something, because he's the kind of guy that's put the boots on the ground and make things happen, and to hear about the legislation that he's passing, and then some of the other things that I'm sure he'll talk about as well. I'm just impressed, and just to say publicly here, that this if anybody in the state legislature deserve our vote, he's the guy that deserves it, and we need to support him 100% because he's supporting us 100%.
I think Representative Love, since we're talking about serving and that we're in the political season now, and et cetera, what would you say to a large number of people? I think we're in a situation where in some of our local areas we have only 7, 8, 10% of the people participating in the suffrage. What would you say to young people what would you say to people this morning about the importance of participating in politics and what it really means from your perspective being in the state legislature?
Okay, let me say to Pastor Walker, thank you for those kind words. Much of what I do is because my father made it very clear for me to understand that I had no choice but to be engaged in the process, because the process shapes everything in our life. I tell folks very clearly, you're not born in this country until there's a birth certificate signed which says you were indeed born at a certain time at a certain place. I mean, in theory, you have to use a birth certificate to get any other documentation going forward. And you're not dead until you get a death certificate. Let you die and your family try to access your bank account or insurance and there's no death certificate. they can't do it, right? So in advance, you must be involved in the process, which means our kids must involve themselves in voting. They must look at candidates and look at what the candidates offer, what promises they make, and then if you're not satisfied with the particular candidate, you have the opportunity to vote them out. That's the process we have. Process of evaluating persons and seeing, okay, have you kept your campaign promises? Like Pastor Walker said, I was engaged in the process of helping our community before running for office. I didn't do it because I wanted to run. I did it because I was raised that way, told oftentimes by my father. Apple trees don't produce apples because they want to prove they're an apple tree. They produce apples because they are an apple tree. And so service was coming out of me in the flood, and then chance came to run for office, and I did. And if you look at the bills that I've passed this particular session, to get a bill passed which will now allow the state of Tennessee to form a maternal mortality review board to reduce pregnancy-related deaths, to pass a bill taking the felony portion off of a possession of a half ounce or less of marijuana to save the state $1.7 million in incarceration fees for small amounts of marijuana when we are causing college students to lose their scholarships because of this. So those are my ways of passing good bills and simply asking people, if you're satisfied with the work I've done, vote me back in. If you're not, vote me back out. And that's the will of the people. But if you don't engage in the process, you will not have anybody up there fighting for your rights.
And so it's very, very important in this season as well as any other season, not only to become involved, but to also support those that are already involved. And you think that if we were able to do that, that we will be able to move further.
And the truth of the matter is, Dr. Haney, you're not going to always get to vote somebody in that you want. You may vote and they may lose. I lost my first 3 elections.
But you eventually made it through.
Because I didn't give up.
Okay, and so what we're going to do, we're going to take our second commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.
Know how the process works, which is you got to have somebody there.